Good afternoon, applicants. We are excited to come to you from Ann Arbor, Michigan, where it's a sunny day and we're sitting around a conference room ready to share our insights and tips with you about applying for round one. So we're going to start today with introductions of the team members who are here today. Some of the team members are on the road traveling and recruiting for the next class, you guys. But let's have the team introduce themselves. All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Taya Sapp. I'm one of the associate directors and happy to answer your questions today.
Hey again, guys. This is Michael Lippert. I'm also one of the associate directors of admission. I've been on the team now for 3 years, and it's been a fun summer meeting so many of you on the road.
And this is Sujin Kwan. I'm the managing director for full-time MBA admissions and program at Ross, and I've been here for a long time. So I've got a lot of opinions and insights to share with you, and I'm happy and excited to do that. We're going to talk about an overview of Ross. We're going to give you our tips. We'll go through some of our most frequently asked questions that the team's been hearing on the road this summer, and then we'll open it up for your questions and next steps. Little snapshot of what our incoming class looks like. They're going to be starting orientation next Monday. We are thrilled. The class size is about 420. The GMAT is a record 720. We're really excited about another year of 43% women. About a third of our class is international, and they're coming from 40 different countries. 3 things we want you to know about Ross. If you know nothing else about Ross, keep these 3 things in your head. We are the best at experience-driven learning of any business school out there. If you want to go somewhere, go anywhere, you can go blue. Go blue, go anywhere. And our community is very close-knit, and I'll tell you why. So let's start with our academics. How do we do MBA education? Well, in your first year, almost all of your classes will be core courses to set up the foundations for your business education. You're able to waive out of some of the core courses if you already have class coursework or majors in econ, stats, and other things. But the last quarter of your year is for what we call math, and I'll talk about that in just a second. The second year is entirely elective, so you can concentrate or focus on your area of interest, or you can continue to take classes that are more broad ranged. You can even take classes outside of our school at one of our 100 plus top 10 ranked graduate programs. It could be at the School of Public Policy, the law school, public health, just to name a few. But there are so many options, and you can take courses in any of those schools. The other thing you should know is that in Business Week's ranking of business schools, they also rank specializations. And in that specialization ranking, we are ranked 9 of our specializations are ranked in the top 10. That puts us second only behind Stanford in terms of the number of specializations that are top 10 ranked. What that means for you is that you're going to be getting strong foundations in every specialization that you would want to have expertise in. And that's going to make you a better manager and leader as you move up in your organization. You're not going to be working in a silo. You're going to have to work with and manage people in different parts of an organization. So that's where the specialization ranking will really serve you well. So I mentioned MAP. So that stands for a mouthful. Not literally a mouthful, but it stands for Multidisciplinary Action Projects. What that is in the last 7 weeks of your first year, you're going to be working on a mini consulting project, full-time with a team of 4 to 6 students. You're not going to have any other classes, so it really is like a full-time job. We have projects that are corporate, entrepreneurial, nonprofit. Half of them are in the U.S., half of them are outside of the U.S. They are with Fortune 500 companies as well as smaller organizations. So whatever your industry or functional interests, there's bound to be a project on the list that you can rank from our more than 100 projects on the list. And what you'll be doing is working to solve a business challenge that that organization has identified with your team of 5 to 6 other students and you're going to have 2 faculty advisors who are going to help you through this project. So you're not going to be flying blind. And at the end of the project, you're going to be presenting to executives within the organization. Now, one of the things we're often asked is, well, if the projects are international, do I have to pay for the travel? No, you don't pay for anything in this MAP project. The sponsor pays for everything, including your travel. On the next slide, I have a list of some of our past MAP sponsors, and you'll see it's quite a range from names that you know, and then the names that you don't know aren't on this list, but wanted to show you that it runs the gamut from tech to hospitality to nonprofit and others. So there is going to be something of interest to every student. So I mentioned that we're experience-driven learning based, and by that we mean we let you go out into the field and actually do things that you wanted, actually practice what you learned in the classroom. One of the things that is new in our experience-driven learning umbrella is the Living Business Leadership Experience. And that was launched last year with 3 different organizations. And that puts students in the driver's seat of running a business. So to give you an example, at Shinola, students launched their audio unit. And the product that they launched was a set of headphones, high-end headphones. So students were doing the marketing and the operations of the e-commerce for it. So that's the kind of experience that students are given when you come to Ross. Another example I'll give you is that students are able to manage investment funds. What better way to learn how to manage an investment fund than by actually doing it with real money? So we have a number of investment funds, from social impact to commercialization to early stage startups. And students are playing with real money. Across the funds, they're managing $10 million. And they're being advised by people who are actually working in that area. Another experience that is action-based is our CEO's class. That's not the official name, but that's what our students call it. This is where a team of students does a simulation where they are working through a crisis that a company had. And they are playing the roles of the CEO, the CFO, the CMO. They're putting on those hats, and they have to present to an audience of investors, journalists, and other stakeholders. And they're talking about how they would solve a particular issue that the company really faced. Meanwhile, an executive from that company, from the C-suite, is there observing and listening to how the students present their solution. At the end of it, the C-suite executive shares how they actually solved the crisis and their rationale for doing it. This is a favorite of our students in their second year. So you probably want to get a great job. These are our career outcomes for the class of 2017, the class that graduated last year. 2018 results are still being tabulated, but as you can see, our grads did really well. 97% of the full-time MBA class had at least one job offer within 3 months of graduation. And then you should know that the vast majority of our students are career switchers, whether it's for function or industry. You can see our total median pay package was $146,000. And below that are some numbers that may surprise you. This is where our graduates went for full-time employment. Chicago, New York, San Francisco, and Seattle were our top locations. So if you have concerns that you'll be, quote unquote, stuck in the Midwest, fear not. Our students are going everywhere. That's what one of the things we mean by go blue, go anywhere. In addition to geography, students can have so much flexibility in terms of functions and industries and companies that they can go to. All of the top recruiters are coming here. To show you a few, on the right side, you'll see our top 5 hiring companies of 2017 grads. Amazon, McKinsey, BCG, Deloitte, Microsoft. We do really well in consulting and tech. lot of students go into those two fields, more than 50%, as you can see. And then the other students go into financial services, CPG, healthcare, and others. Another piece of the Go Blue, Go Anywhere is related to our alumni network. We have more than 500,000 living alumni who from the University of Michigan in more than 100 countries. This is the largest living alumni network in the world. Now, size isn't everything, but what you'll find is when you meet Michigan alums and Ross alums, they're incredibly passionate about the school and so willing to engage with you and talk about the school. You'll find that Michigan alums in particular take a lot of pride in having gone to the University of Michigan, and they're happy to share that with candidates. Now, you see below Ross Alumni Advantage. That's a program that our new dean launched a few years ago where any graduate of the Ross School of Business can take any executive education open enrollment class free for life. That's free for life. So after you've graduated and you want to take more classes at Ross, you can look into a class in one of our executive education courses. That's a huge benefit, one that no other school is offering. Let's move into now the application process, the part that you've been waiting for. And I'm going to have each one of our associate directors today talk about the differences in our application. So Michael, you want to talk about our rec?
Yeah, so, one thing, and this is a credit to Sujin, is I think, the Ross application in many ways is as straightforward as it gets, and we put a lot of thought into making it easy for the applicant. MBA admissions is kind of a black box, and we know it's a lot of work for applicants, so we definitely think strategically about what are ways that we can make life easier for you as candidates and make sure we only ask for the information we need. So one of those areas is the recommendation letter. Most schools will ask for maybe 2 or even 3 recommendations with a host of questions. We really just ask for one, and I think we'll go into more detail a bit later about how that impacts things or what you should look for. But having just one rec letter is definitely a difference. And we also use the common recommendation form. So us, along with a number of other top MBA programs, will use the common rec form, which will make life a lot easier for your recommender, and they'll answer all the same questions. So keep that in mind.
Hey, you want to talk about our short answer essays?
Sure. So when you're doing your applications, this is another way that Ross is going to be different from the other schools. A lot of schools obviously are going to have different essays that you are indicative of, in many ways, the things that we want to know about you, what the individual schools, how we want to get to know you better. So at Ross, we have a career goal essay, which is similar to other schools, but the one that's very different for us is the short answer questions. So you have the choice between 2 choices for each of 3 different groups. And the challenge with these is they are 100 words each. So they are written, they need to be written concisely, but they are a chance for you to share more things about yourself so we can get to know you better and really understand your passions and what drives you.
I've talked to some candidates over the last few weeks about who've already started the application, and they've said the short answer essays really interested them as they were looking at different schools' applications. They said, this is the kind of question that I want to answer and I want people to know about me because it really reveals something. And it was so great to hear that because that was our intent with these questions, for you to have a chance to share something that helps us get to know you better beyond just random facts, but something important about the kind of person that you are and how you think. How about the team exercise? Michael, you want to take that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. We as an admissions team, and again, this is Sujin's idea, and sort of a credit to Sujin as it's her brainchild. But I think we all feel strongly that people make the place here at Ross. And when we talk about culture, we know all schools talk about culture and community, but it really is something different here. I know when my wife was a part of Ross and in the MBA program, she would come home and talk about the level of discourse in her classes and all the different backgrounds she was meeting and how comfortable she felt sharing her background, which was a little bit different than everybody else's. And I think there's an important dynamic there. But frankly, there just weren't enough pieces in the traditional MBA application that gave us enough insight into your interpersonal and communication skills. You're going to be in a team or in a group project for almost every core class here at Ross for your math project. It's so important to us that you understand those dynamics. So the team exercise is an optional group interview where we just really want to get a sense for how you act in teams. How do you communicate with teammates? What that looks like, and we can talk a little bit more later about the team exercise, but it's definitely a great opportunity to showcase that for us in a different way than some other applications. But it's a really good example too. This isn't all just about a test score and a GPA. We really want to understand how you communicate and how you fit in our class.
So Michael used a phrase that a lot of students or applicants often use that I say, it's not really a group interview because we're not asking the group questions about themselves. So we call it a team exercise on purpose because it really is about the teamwork and working together. So it's not, we're not going to be firing questions at the group. Here's our timeline. We do applications in 3 rounds. The first round is coming up, which I imagine those of you on the phone know that it's on October 1st. The thing to know about when to submit your application is, so we often get asked the question, can we submit it early? Sure, you can submit it early if you want, but will we review it early? No. We review them after the deadline has passed. So there really is no benefit to you to submitting it 3 weeks in advance. We've never had our system crash on the deadline day.
Careful, Susan.
That was such a dig.
I hope I'm not jinxing ourselves. But
Susan, that question came in already, and you already answered it.
Oh.
Wow, that's a good sign.
I'm a mind reader. I can anticipate what applicants are thinking about. But you've probably heard other admissions officers from every school say, apply in the round when you think your application will be best. So if you feel like your essays are great, but your GMAT score is not the best, then go ahead and hold off and take it again before submitting. Don't rush in round 1. Conversely, if you've got a great GMAT score, but you feel like your essays, you're tired of working on your essays, but they're only mediocre, go ahead and spend that extra time to make them even better because you want to put your best foot forward and you don't have a chance to resubmit an application. So turn it in when it's best. There's a note about the team exercise at the bottom. Those are the locations where team exercises will be held. Rounds 1, 2, and 3, we'll have them in Ann Arbor. But for the international locations in Sao Paulo, Tokyo, Shanghai, and either Mumbai or Delhi, we haven't finalized which round we're going to be doing them in. Most likely we'll be doing Mumbai or Delhi in round 1, but we'll confirm that over the coming weeks. And stay tuned for my blog where we'll share where we are in the admissions process and other things that you should know.
Yeah, and just historically, just to add, we've traditionally done the other team exercises in Tokyo, Shanghai, and Sao Paulo in round 2. So that's typically like very late January or early February, somewhere around there.
So we're going to share some tips about some of the important pieces of the application. I'll start with the resume. It's often overlooked because it's not one of the things where you fill in the blank or where we've prompted you with questions. It's free form, which we've seen a lot of forms, and people turn in things that are great, and some people turn in things that are not so helpful to their candidacy. So the tips that I'd share about the resume, it's the very first thing that we look at when we open up your application. It gives us the snapshot of who you are, where you've been, and what you've accomplished. In terms of work experience, we're looking for what was your impact and what kind of achievements did you have there, what your contributions were, not a job description. Another tip about the resume is don't be jargony. By that I mean don't include acronyms that will be unfamiliar or terms that are very technical. This should be a resume that someone who sees it who's working in a different industry can understand what you did. Keep it to 1 page. Don't try to shrink the font to fit a lot in. People often ask, is it okay or should I include my interests, activities, certifications, all those things? Yes, include those at the bottom. It is important because it is a part of the snapshot of you. So it's not It doesn't mean that you should go out and get a hobby now so you can add it in there. It should be something that you are authentically interested in and authentically have done or have experience in. Don't write that you completed some marathon, because guess what? I'm going to look it up. So don't make things up. If you say you speak Russian, guess what? You might get one of our Russian students as an interviewer. So make sure all of it is authentic. Any other tips on the resume that you guys would share that I haven't already?
I'd also be conscious of the fact that hopefully you would be invited to interview, and the resume is the only thing that your interviewers would see. So you should be conscious of the space, the things that you put on your resume, but also know that if you're interviewed, your interviewer isn't necessarily going to have seen your essays or any other part of your application. So don't make assumption that they will know things about you that aren't on your resume.
Yeah, and I'll just add one more. I think a question just came in related to this that I think is a little more under the radar, but I wouldn't feel sort of forced to give equal space to every single job I've ever had. I think that's a mistake I often see candidates make, and I'm sure your entry-level role right out of undergrad was great and you did a great job, but the reality is you probably had much more responsibility and far more impressive accomplishments and a greater scope to your work in your last role or the last couple of roles you've had. So you can focus on those in your resume, and those can take up a lot more space. In terms of exactly how far back and what you want to include, we typically say from college on, but that's, just sort of a recommendation, and, thinking about quality over quantity in terms of how far back to go and what you include.
Michael, you said from college on. Does that mean we want to take their college internships?
That's a good clarification. We typically are more interested in maybe ways you interact in your college community on campus, things like that, but not necessarily internships you've had during college.
Yeah. And this probably seems silly for me to mention, but we've seen it in resumes. No need to go back as far as high school. We don't need to see that. Start from college on.
Don't need to include your SAT scores.
No. And believe me, people have done that.
Very much so.
The last thing I'd add about the resume is that in many ways, less is more. So kind of what Michael was getting at is making sure you're conscious of the space, what you're sharing and the space that you have. And also, I think it applies to what Sujin was saying about extracurriculars earlier, is listing 7 different things that you're involved in isn't as effective as listing 1 or 2 that you're clearly indicating the impact or how much you're involved with those. And we really want to see the things that drive you most. So think about that.
The other thing I'd say about the resume is when I open it up and see it on the screen, I want to see it breathe. By that, I mean, I don't want to feel like you're standing right in front of my face because you've put so much on the page and I can barely breathe. Make sure that there's enough white space and that you're focused, as Taya said, focused on the things that are critical for us to know. And you want everything to have impact to your candidacy. And that means talking only about the things that highlight different skills or experiences that you've had. No need to be redundant if you've done the same kind of job in 2 different organizations, same exact kind of project. Keep it short. Breathing is important.
It's like a fine wine.
Yeah. All right. The rec letters. Who wants to take rec letters?
I'm happy to start off. I love talking about rec letters, and everybody makes fun of me for it, but I get really excited about it because I think it's kind of an overlooked part of our process, and that applicants think it's kind of easy or a third party is doing it, so they don't pay that much attention to it. And the reality is we get 90% good letters of recommendation. They work, they say positive things. That's great. But you really want yours to be one of the 10% or so that really stand out and kind of make a difference for your application. And so doing that really depends on choosing the right person. So a couple of tips along those lines. In our case, when we only ask for one recommender, I would call it almost essential that you choose somebody who's seen you in the workplace and in a supervisory capacity and really understood how you worked and you were responsible to. There are some unique situations if you're an entrepreneur or you work for a family business where we will absolutely look at a client or a mentor or a business partner, but it really should be somebody who's seen you in the workplace to give us that lens on your candidacy. The other thing I'd say is I think candidates can really take on. It's okay to take your recommender to coffee or maybe dinner and talk to them about your application, right? And say, these are my goals, and these are the strengths I'm highlighting in my application. For your recommenders, sometimes it's hard to remember your accomplishments from 2 or 3 years ago. We all go through that sort of process in maybe performance reviews. You're thinking about, what did I do last year?
Right.
It's hard to remember.
I can't remember.
Yeah. So it's going to be hard for your recommenders. So refresh them of those really big projects you worked on. Talk to them about things that you're highlighting that you think are the biggest strengths in your candidacy, and they can reflect that in your letter. It's always really rewarding as an admissions committee member to sort of see a story come together. So if you've talked about a big project in one of your essays that's really meaningful to you, and then you talked about it in your interview and your interviewer was impressed, if we kind of get that third-party context and a recommender says it was incredible, that's something we're going to remember, and that really stands out for your application. So think about those things. Give people time, especially if you're applying in round 2. A recommendation written on New Year's Eve or Christmas Day is probably not going to be the best recommendation or the most thoughtful one. So make sure you give your recommender some time to think about that.
Michael, what should an applicant do if their recommender says, can you write it for me and I'll sign it?
That is not okay. Besides being entirely unethical, it's also you being made. We get to really learn your voice. We spend a considerable amount of time reading your application, reading your essays. We know 9 times out of 10 when that happens because we can pick up on it, and it's really obvious. So it loses sort of its weight entirely if it doesn't come from an authentic voice, and so resist that temptation entirely.
I'd also add, you want to make sure you prep them and you give them time, but you want to make sure that you're picking someone who is going to write you a strong recommendation. Like maybe your current supervisor doesn't know you the best, or they are very busy or out on a leave when you need this. There's probably somebody else who knows you really well in a context that could work well. I would rather you pick somebody that is going to write you a strong letter of recommendation than pick somebody who is short on time and is only going to write us 2 to 3 sentences, and we don't really get a sense of who you are. So I often a lot of times tell people that when they're asking their recommender to give them an out. Say, are you willing to write me a strong letter of recommendation, and make it clear that you're okay if they're not.
Yikes, that's a hard way to ask. I don't know that I'd ask that way. I would say, do you have time to write me a letter? Because then they can use time as the excuse to say, no, I don't have time, but it could really be that they didn't want to write you a good one.
Yeah. I
don't want someone to come back and say, no, I'd write you one, but it wouldn't be good. Okay. Not that anyone would really say that, but actually it's happened, which is why we say that. All right, essays. Taya, what tips do you have for them on the essays?
The essays are your opportunity for us to get to know you better. So one tip with this, I get asked a lot of times, is it okay to include things from work in my essays? And maybe, if that's really the best way that you can answer a question. We have 3 different short answers, so I would recommend not having all of the answers be focused on that, because you have to think you're also going to have your resume and your letter of recommendation to be sharing accomplishments from work. So you want to think about how you're using the stories that you have to share and how we're getting to know the whole you. So know that this is a holistic application. We're going to be reading those other elements, and if there's an accomplishment that is highlighted in your resume that we really get to understand well, you might not need to focus on that so much in the essays. So you can focus on other parts of who you are personally.
I'll just add a couple of quick ones, and then I'll tee up a question that we got
for
you guys. But a couple of ones that I give a lot are, the essays are the only way we get to hear your voice and who you are before we decide who to interview. And so step back, and before you hit submit, make sure you're not just telling us what you think we want to hear or what you think sounds right, but you're really telling us something about you and who you are and what you value and what you'll bring to our community, because we really care about that fit and what you're bringing to our community. And sometimes it's hard to decide who to interview, and the essays can really be a good way to get some insight into, hey, we want to hear more from this person, so make us want to meet you in a way while answering the question. And then the second tip I give is I get the question a lot on the road. Do I need to tell you the exact company or place I want to work for, the job title I want to have? And I would encourage you not to overthink that. It's one thing if you know what that is and you've talked to people and that's exactly what you want, that's great. but it doesn't really influence us all that much if you say, I want to be a product manager at Amazon. Like, anybody can write that.
Yeah.
The reality is we don't actually verify your essay at graduation and say, did you do this? Because if we did, a lot of people wouldn't graduate. You're supposed to sort of explore. That's the benefit of the MBA. We're really just looking for like a cohesive and coherent plan, and that you've given a lot of thoughts of what your transferable skills are and how you're going to recruit in that industry. And so that could take a lot of different forms, but don't obsess over an exact company or name and get distracted. The question is, along the career essay lines, we as a group, I remember back in May with you guys talking about, do we ask why Ross or how Ross will help you get there? And it's not really part of the question. We had a reason for that. How can somebody sort of share why Ross throughout the application if it's not in this essay?
Well, I mean, it can certainly, if you're invited to interview, you can certainly share the why Ross at that part. That is often the best time to share why Ross with your interviewer. But it's with the essay, it's kind of up to you. The most important thing is that you're answering the question. And if why Ross is a part of your response, that's fine. That, like, you can share that if you know something specific about the school that's going to help you meet your specific career goals and it's relevant to what you're saying, that's perfectly acceptable. What we found before, though, is that we often will get a laundry list of clubs that people are interested in joining. Okay,
Classes.
I want to, classes that they want to take. And it's not really clear to us that you've done research beyond 5 minutes around the school. And we really want to make sure you understand your career goals, and we'll ask you more about the why Ross during your interview. So we don't necessarily need you to give us a long list of the clubs you want to join as part of the school, because we fully expect that you would join clubs as a student.
If we wanted to know why Ross, we would have kept it in our essay questions. So don't feel like you need to engineer your essay so that you cover that. And by virtue of applying to us, we're going to assume that you're interested in coming to Ross to some extent, hopefully a big extent. And as Taya said, during your interview, you will be asked that. This is a freebie. You will be asked that. And so you should be prepared to answer it then. And our interviews are conducted by our students and our alums, and they are very passionate about the school. So if your why Ross answer is weak then, that's when it might hurt you. So you don't need to worry about it so much in the essays, but you should worry about it for the interview. No, actually, don't even worry about it. Just do it. All right. Question that we get all the time. Should I retake the GMAT or GRE?
Speaking of things they're worrying about.
Yeah.
So I would say it depends, and who doesn't love an it depends answer? Well, it depends. So this past spring, someone on our wait list came to Ross and found me in the ladies' room and said, Sujin, I got a 720 and I'm on the wait list. Should I retake the GMAT? And I said, no, probably not, because you're already on the wait list, and a 720 is a good score, and it probably wasn't the thing that prohibited you from being waitlisted in the first place. So when I say it depends on what the rest of your application looks like. We want to know that you will be able to do the work that you're going to have to do in business school. In our first term, in our first 7 weeks, you're going to have to take 3 quantitative courses plus a non-quant course, and it's very, very analytical. And so we need evidence that you can do that, whether it's through your undergraduate coursework, through a good GMAT score or GRE score, and or your work experience. So we need that view into, can you do the work? Now, does a particular GMAT score mean that you will automatically do well? No. What we found is there are plenty of people who have very high GMAT scores who come and are not necessarily at the top of the class, but we know that they're able to do the work. That's what we're looking for. Is there a minimum? That's a question that we get often. There is no hard and fast minimum, because we are looking across multiple data points to see if you can do the work. Maybe your GMAT score is below our average of 720. That's okay. We're also going to look at your undergraduate coursework as well as your work experience, and maybe what your recommender has to say about your analytical skills. So the GMAT and the GRE scores are not the be-all and end-all. That said, if we had 2 applicants who had great work experience and would be great contributors to the school, and the only major difference was your GMAT score, we are going to take the higher GMAT or GRE score over the one with the lower. So that's the lens that you have to take, that if you were compared to another applicant with a similar background, how would you stack up?
Yeah, I would just say, we do see improvements over, when people retake it for usually a second or a third time. I will say we have lots of data from reading applications and from GMAC, who runs the GMAT, that typically around the the 4th or 5th attempt for sure, that people really sort of plateau. So I think using your awareness and being self-aware to say, hey, I've maxed out, I've done all I can. Don't be masochistic and take this just for the sake of it. Or if you took it cold and did pretty well and they're like, oh, I'm at the average already, but I know I can do better, then maybe you want to invest some time in doing better. I think you as an applicant really have a good sense of where you're at. The other thing I'd say is if you do retake it and you happen to have success and your score improves after you've applied, you can always submit in a test score to us. It's rossadmissions@umich.edu. Pretty simple, but you'll send that out and you'll see that again. You can always submit a new test score and we'll take a look at that in the application. It's just it can't be guaranteed when somebody reads your application.
Yeah. My answer to that is usually if you think you can do better, then yes, you should retake it. If not, then move on and think about other ways that how you can make the best and strongest application.
How can they know if they can do better?
They take practice tests. They feel like maybe the day of that exam, they didn't feel like they were on, they didn't eat enough, didn't get enough sleep. There's always circumstances that sometimes people feel like they don't necessarily, were at their best when they took the test.
Okay, good. All right, is the optional essay truly optional? The quick answer is yes, it is truly optional. When should they take the option to do it?
Some good examples, the 2 best examples in my mind are usually if your recommender is not your current supervisor, it's really helpful to hear why you selected the person you did. And I always call them the optional bullet points. And I'm not being said, we are absolutely okay with bullet points and a 1 or 2 sentence explanation as to why your current supervisor couldn't write it or why you chose somebody is perfectly fine. That's the best example. Another good example is we know things happen during undergrad and maybe your GPA isn't what you want it to be, but there often are some really extenuating circumstances. So, if you had a death in the family or an injury, unfortunately, or you were working a significant amount of hours outside of school, it's just something we can't really see on a transcript. We really would like to hear about it and get that context, but I think being concise and thoughtful in how you phrase that as opposed to giving us a overly long-winded explanation is definitely helpful.
All right. Let's not belabor that.
Touche.
Well said, Michael.
Oopsie. Can I submit an additional rec? Ross requires only 1. Does it mean that it's optional to submit 2?
So we ask for 1 and we require 1. That is what we want. We're asking you to just submit one letter of recommendation. That you shouldn't be submitting an additional 1. Occasionally, an alum who knows our team well or might send an email supporting a candidate, but that is not something that you should seek out anybody to be doing. Our overall recommendation is to just stick to the 1 that we're asking for.
All right. Is it easier to get admitted to Ross in round 1?
Well, I can't give you the exact data behind it because Susan would get mad. But generally speaking, I really feel I get this question a lot on the road, and I get the sense that a lot of other schools you might be applying to, you're kind of hearing like, oh, round 1, there's more spots available, or I got to get it in now, or there's more scholarship available. And I really feel like we as a team have looked at some of the numbers, have talked about this as a group, and we really feel there's not any significant difference between rounds 1 and round 2. Now, that's not to say if your application is ready and you'd like to know where you stand and you want to make plans, there can definitely be some advantages to round 1. So keep that in mind. But generally speaking, we know we're going to get more applications in round 2, and the quality of those applications is going to be really high. So we also save more spots in the class and more scholarship dollars in round 2. So your chances really look the same. So the short answer here, apply, like a great application in round 2 is going to beat a good application in round 1. So if you can make significant improvements over that time, I would recommend waiting. If your application is generally going to look the same, then feel free to submit when you feel ready. The last thing I'd add, because I've seen this question come in the inbox a lot, is we don't open any, I think Sujin mentioned this, but again, it's worth reiterating. We won't open your application until all applications have been submitted, because we want to see what the entire candidate pool looks like. So there's no advantage whatsoever in applying, 30 days before the deadline or at 11:50 the night before, when most candidates do.
That said, I see a couple of questions in here about if they can apply in round 1 and submit parts earlier. You need to submit every part of the application before the application deadline.
Yeah, that's a tricky game to play. I'd be careful about applying in round 1 because you want a decision, but with a test score that you're not really proud of or that might not be that competitive, thinking you're going to send it to us in a month. It can work and you're welcome to do so, but it's a really tricky game to play and probably a risk you don't want to take.
Good answer. Should I participate in the team exercise? It's supposed to be optional, so do I need to do it, and will it hurt my chances if I don't?
Well, let's back up a quick second. I'm seeing lots of questions about what the team exercise is. So we might have assumed everybody knew what it was. So do you want to quickly give, an example of what the team exercise looks like?
Sure, and I'll be putting out a video shortly in the next few weeks that has details about the team exercise and how we look at it. But for those of you who are early birds and are on this call, we'll share with you what the team exercise is. So it is an opt-in part of the interview process, and you and 4 to 5 other applicants will be put into a random group to do a project, team exercise. You'll get a little case of words from which you will select a few, and your group will decide how to use those words to create a business challenge and solution based on those words. You'll have 15 minutes to do that and then create a 5-minute presentation that you will deliver to your evaluators. Your evaluators will be sitting with your circle of your teammates, observing how you all interact. And the purpose, as Michael mentioned earlier, is for us to have insight into your communication and your interpersonal skills. There is no right answer to this. It does not require any prior business experience. There is no winner in this. It's that we're watching how each of you operates on a task that is unfamiliar with people you don't know on something that you cannot prepare for. So there's no need to worry about it. No one prepares, and this was by design so that we could level the playing field. It is not a case that you're going to have to read and study in advance and come up with great answers and insights for. It's how you work with other people. That's what we're really trying to get at. So no need to stress about it. And hopefully when you do get the invitation to interview, you will opt in, because not only will you get to share another data point about who you are and how you conduct yourself on a team, but you'll also get to meet the kind of people who want to come to Ross. And that will be valuable to you as you make your decision of where to go ultimately, because it's about finding fit. And fit isn't just about the people who are already at the school. Fit is also about who will be going to school with you. So as you're going on all of these interviews to different schools, I would encourage you to take a look around the room, see who else is there and how they roll, because you want to be at a school where you're going to be with students who are going to help you shine and help you do your best. So the team exercise, we feel like, provides that benefit to applicants. Okay, questions. Michael, are there other questions, big buckets, that we haven't addressed?
There are. Let's see. Well, one, I'll take a tactical one first. It's an optimistic question. I love it. It's, what about scholarships? So you're going to get in. That's great news. I'm a big fan of our scholarship process. I feel strongly about this. I think we do 2 things that are really helpful. One is the day you're admitted, which fingers crossed happens, we let you know exactly where you stand from a scholarship standpoint. So you can really make the best decision possible, and there's no waiting involved. We want you to make the best decision, so we let you know right away. So that's good. The second thing is there's no separate application. So you don't have to fill out extra essays or extra forms. We really just look at the best applications by the buckets that we've talked about throughout this webinar: academics, your work experience, what you bring to the class, and we take the top applications and offer competitive scholarships. So that's a pretty cool process. So hopefully, fingers crossed, there's some good news on that end later in the year.
Michael, are you sure it's not about the GMAT score?
It is not just about the GMAT score. It definitely can be helpful, and that's sort of what I was alluding to. If you feel like you have a score that's next to our class average, that could be great, but if you could do better, that really might influence your financial aid result for sure. But we look at, who is going to bring something unique contribution to the class and work experience that really stands out and that will be important to our recruiters. That's exciting too.
And when Michael says work experience is important to recruiters, don't worry if you're not working in that industry now. Don't worry if you don't have a business background, because there are so many recruiters who value our students with non-traditional backgrounds, people who've worked in the Peace Corps, students who've been teachers, students who have worked in the military, in nonprofit, in doing relief work in South Sudan. I just talked with a student this morning who that was his background. So, and you can make that career change here. That's what Ross is really good at, helping people get to the industry that they are hoping to get to. But it takes work on your part too. Don't think that you're just going to come here and we're going to give you a ticket.
That is such a neat transition. It's like we have ESP going on, Sujan. We got some questions about non-traditional background.
Oh, okay.
So I think that's something Ross is known for. We're really proud of it. There's a reason, 85 to 90% of our class is making a career change. But how can people from non-traditional backgrounds show us the right skills and sort of communicate to us that they're ready for Ross? What makes them stand out?
So what I look for in the background and in the essays and in the rec letter are for signs of the ability to think, to work on teams, to lead projects, to be engaged, to take initiative, to go beyond what they really are expected to do in a lot of instances. We're looking for characteristics more than hard skills, because you're going to learn the hard skills in business school. That's why you're coming. If you already have a BBA, great, and you can waive out of some classes. But if you don't, we've got support for you here, from tutors to classmates to faculty. If your background is non-traditional, you will still have equal opportunity to do well in any of these career paths.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times if you're coming from a non-traditional career, you might not know a Ross or an MBA alum. You might not have a lot of role models that follow this career path you're thinking of. So I would certainly encourage people to reach out to student ambassadors on our website to learn more and get a really good understanding of the different kinds of career paths they can take. Because having a strong understanding of these options, I think, is only going to help you have a stronger application and also help you once you're in an MBA program. One of the things Michael alluded to earlier is we're really looking to see what kind of transferable skills you have to these other careers. And if you're able to articulate that for yourself in the application stage, that's going to give you take you one step forward for when you're in an MBA program.
Perfect. I'm going to take a couple of quick hitters here really fast to keep things moving, but just touch on, because I know they're common questions. If your undergraduate degree was international but completed in English, you do not need to submit a language exam. You can optionally submit it, but it is not required, so don't worry about that. And also, another question we're getting is about future webinars or future topics and so that's one of our next steps. But if you're interested in a specific career, such as consulting or technology, we have webinars for each specific career area. There's also a question about MAP and the selection process. We'd run out of time if we talked all about the different options for MAP, but there is a webinar on MAP that really details what that selection process looks like. Yes, you have a choice in the project you want, so don't worry about that. So I just wanted to touch on those. What about, and this is related to the non-traditional background question, if your quant score is a little bit light and borderline, and we don't necessarily have a minute, but how are ways to sort of give us insights that you're ready for the rigor of the curriculum, or ways to convince us that you're prepared for Ross?
Let's say you are an art history major, you took no math classes, and your GMAT or GRE quant score is low. I would retake the GMAT or GRE to show us a higher score, because there's going to be nothing in your background to give us that confidence that you can do the work. Now, if you were, let's say, an econ major and your quant score on the GMAT or GRE was a little bit lower, we're going to be a little less concerned. If you did well in your major and in college, then at least we've got some evidence that you can do the work. So we're looking at it holistically. We're weighing the different parts of your application to determine, are there enough signs that you can do the work?
Yeah. Also looking at your work experience. So if you work in a more quantitative focused field, that can help us give more confidence.
Like if you weren't a quant major, but now you're developing financial models, for example, then we know that you have some facility with quant.
But that's an example of, if that's something that, a hurdle that you might have, make sure that that's demonstrated strongly. So that might be something to emphasize with your recommender, that how you are building these financial models or how you're using these skills in the workplace.
And people will often ask us, well, can I take a math class and show that I can do calculus or statistics? And the answer to that for admission is no for us. There may be schools out there that do take your classes post-undergrad, but that will only help you with us for your coursework once you're admitted and you are a student. But for admissions purposes, we're really looking at apples to apples, either your undergrad coursework and your test scores.
Awesome. I would just add quickly, because it's happening next week, so it's top of mind for me. There are sort of analytics and different like quantitative primers that we provide as a school for students. We don't expect you to be experts on these things. You just have to show us evidence that you're prepared to get there. But there's also sort of some boot camps to get you ready for this, which is also helpful as well. We got a question I really like about what is the Ross community, and how is, we say the student body is tight knit, but in what ways? That might be out of bounds because this is an application tips webinar. So how about I make it a double question? I got a similar question or a question about visiting, right? And trying to understand what campus looks like. Do they get extra points if they come visit? And I feel like visiting is a really good way to learn about our community. So you guys want to touch on both in the same vein?
I think you already touched on it. They should come visit their experience community. But if you aren't able to visit, I would connect with a student ambassador. We have a web page for student ambassadors, and you can filter on their backgrounds and their career goals and where they're from. So I would highly encourage talking with one or more of our students, and not just our students, but students from other schools. That's really how you're going to get a sense for what the community is like. Now, to the point of being tight-knit, what makes the Ross community so tight-knit is that more than 90% of our students are from outside of Michigan. So this is a new place for almost everybody here. There's not going to be a big pocket of students who are from the area where you're going to school, and so you have this shared experience. And Ann Arbor is the kind of place where it's a small city. It's a great college town, and it creates really tight bonds because students aren't going off looking for excitement and jobs and whatnot in the downtown area as much as you would in San Francisco or New York or LA or you name the city where a lot of good schools are. There isn't that pre-established network for these students, so they're developing new ones together.
I completely agree. It's why I came back from New York a second time. What if somebody really wants to visit and see this awesome little town firsthand? When are some good times to visit this fall?
So there are a lot of different opportunities. We start our regular visit in-person program in September and typically offer it 3 times a week. So Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays, as long as classes are in session and our students are here so that you can meet them. We also have a couple of visit programs. We have a Women in Leadership Conference and Up Close Diversity Weekend in October. So that is a great time to visit if learning from either of those communities is important to you. So you can learn more about those on our events page.
Awesome. How about one last question? Or two. I'll do one really quick because we sort of implied it. We keep saying GRE or GMAT. And we say that interchangeably because we really do not have a preference. We recommend taking the exam. I would recommend taking some practice tests, maybe taking a practice test for both, seeing which one you do better in and rolling with that one because we really do not have a preference between the two. So don't think about it too much. We will be posting GRE averages on our class profile in a couple of weeks as well, so you can get a sense of where you're at as well, because we know there's a lot of people who are thinking about the GRE. If you're a dual degree student, absolutely take the GRE. We're not trying to make you take extra exams just for the sake of it. One last question. We got so excited talking about the team exercise and how it works and what it looks like. What if you're an international student and we're not in your country in that round you applied in, or you happen to be out of the country and you can't make it to campus? Do we hold it against people, or how does that?
Absolutely not. No.
Yeah.
I mean, you can come to Ann Arbor. We encourage you to come to Ann Arbor to do it, and a lot of our international applicants do. But if you can't for some reason, no, it doesn't work against you. It's additive, not subtractive.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to make that the last question, because I know we have 400 students that are getting ready to start orientation, and we're excited to go say hello to all of them and work on things with them. Hopefully that's you next year. But we talked about some next steps, but what else, Sujan?
So you can read them on the slides. You can attend our webinars. We've got a bunch of them coming up. Go to our events page to see what is coming up. We've got events in lots of locations around the world. The team's going to be going to Latin America, Asia, where else?
Yeah, Latin America and Asia this year. I tell you, there's a lot of Forte events all around the country this month, right?
Yeah.
For our women's community. In September, we're in Europe. So we're all over the world. Come check out the events page.
A ton of consortium MAPS events coming up too, and we do a lot of events with peer schools, so you can learn about Ross along with other schools.
And then I encourage you to follow a number of Ross blogs. There's an admissions blog that I write. I share a bunch of admissions tips, where we are in the process, behind the scenes info, and things that are exciting around school. We also have student voices blogs where students write about their experience. So those are always interesting. And then the school overall has a blog too, talking about things that are exciting across the school. And then, of course, come visit us. We'd love to see you. We'd love to see people on campus. Question related to that we get often, I'm going to squeeze this in, Michael, is, well, if I can only visit once, should I do it before I apply or after I apply? If it were me, I would wait. Well, if I thought my application was really good, and I wouldn't turn it in unless it was really good, I would wait for the interview invitation and come to campus then, because you get the added benefit of meeting other candidates. But there's never a bad time to visit. So please come visit us this fall, come in the winter, see what winter in Michigan is really like. There are so many of our interviewees who came to campus when it was snowing and cold, and they're here because they love their experience. There's a lot of warmth inside the community, so come check it out. Thank you guys for joining. Stay tuned for a future webinar, and this is the admissions team signing off.
Go Blue.
Go Blue.